Hello and welcome to the Texas Mind Exchange podcast. My name is Cody Gould and I'll be your host. Today we talked with Trevor and Morgan from Nomadik AI. We talked about homelessness and how they use data to help impact the homeless crisis that we're seeing in our community, as well as talking about fentanyl and Narcan and how that also is impacting homelessness. So without further ado, welcome to the Texas Mind Exchange. Just as a reminder, all statements expressed by our guests on this podcast are their own and should not be considered official views or opinions of myself or anyone else at Texas State University. I know that most folks don't know what Nomadik is. You guys are relatively newer in regards to like the scene of like mental health and homelessness. So I guess before we begin, would love a brief history of how you got started, reason, kind of outline of just everything Nomadik.
Yeah, so Morgan and I worked in defense prior to this, primarily working in like geospatial intelligence, which is basically like we looked at cameras and satellites and stuff like that. Didn't really want to work in defense anymore, and we wanted to figure out where to apply those skills. So like it was technically like an AI company, and you can go apply AI anywhere, but that's not really what we wanted to do. We wanted to take those like specialized skills we learned and take it somewhere. So we looked into some societal issues in the U.S. to see like where we could apply it, right? So like human trafficking, drug trafficking, mental health, and we found the spot where all of it kind of met was at homelessness. And we were like, okay, so how can we take these skills and apply it to homelessness? So we started with our app. So you can take pictures, drop points, whatever, just telling us like where are things happening. Because we looked into like how do they do it right now in homelessness, and it's like they'll go find somebody, they'll take their information, they'll put it into a database, and it'll just kind of sit there. There's not a whole ton of geospatial stuff that's associated with that person. Like most of it is like we found them at this street corner and this street, right? Like that's it. There's nothing else. It's not like in Austin specifically. There's camps all out in the woods, and it's very hard to like pinpoint. Okay, exactly where do we find this person? Where do we know they walk around? Like if we need to find them again because we have a house for them, we can't really do that right now. So we worked on that like geospatial integration and getting the community involved in actually sending information in.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah.
So like broad level, it's like what we learned, especially working with the DoD, is like intelligence is everything. And if you don't know everything you can know and have models that work for the interactions that you're trying to make a solution for, you're just in the dark. And so like when we came over and started looking at that, we want to make a difference here. We want to make something work for the betterment of society here. We walked into it and realized that a lot of the tech, especially in a lot of the tech efforts and the approaches were antiquated drastically. And it was like, turning knobs on a machine that you'd have no idea how it works, trying to get some sort of output. So we want basically the gist of the app to start our software basically is to get that base level intelligence working so we can, figure out how this works before we try and strategize anything.
Yeah. And is the app for government specifically? Because I know we can all get on it.
Yeah.
But I guess who is the intended audience?
So there's basically two models, right? There's the, I live in my neighborhood and I just kind of want to know what's around me. I want to be able to document it, stuff like that. Because like in Austin, right, where we're at, the 311 system is basically a black hole. Like people report stuff to it and then it vanishes and nothing really gets done. Maybe they shut down a street to fill a pothole for like 6 weeks, but that's basically it. But what we started doing was just going to the fire stations, the police stations, the EMS and saying, hey, how do you guys handle this right now? And it was basically like word of mouth. Like each fire station is like, we know where the ones in our area are, but we'll go to 2 we haven't seen today. And I've been working at the station for 2 years. So it changes very rapidly. So we were like, okay, well, we have this app. You guys are free to use it. Just, give us feedback. And the first responders have loved it because they actually have information. So if I click on a camp, it'll tell me approximately how many people are there, approximately how many pets are there, what are the trails through the camp, what kind of hazards are there for the fire department? Is there propane, gasoline? Are there needles? Is there a lot of human waste? What am I specifically expecting when I go in? Because most of the time they just assume it's the worst. And then when they go in, it's based off of that posture. which, like, when you're interacting with people who have mental health issues, is not necessarily the best way to approach situations, like especially if the police have to go there for some reason. And so that's primarily like the app targeting, and then we have our like software platform that's for like coordinating the actual city with the nonprofits with the first responders, because the current HMIS systems, or homeless management information systems, are not coordinated like pretty much at all. Basically, what you have is a continuum of care in the region, or usually a city, and they will go find an HMIS vendor. They'll pick them. They'll get all the nonprofits they want on board, but they have the right to exclude whoever they want. So in Houston, for example, they allow the police department and the city onto it, but in Austin, they don't. So they're not working with the same information when they go to these places. And so we're trying to bridge that gap of, hey, just give us what you have, and we can use, a decade-old software principle of like user roles to say, hey, you have access to this information, you have access to this windowed piece of this information because you don't need the rest of this. Because a lot of it was like, oh, well, some of this is HIPAA, or, the police department doesn't want the nonprofits have access to this. And it's like, this is a solved problem. We can do this. But because the government is really slow to adopt technologies, like obviously, but homelessness is like even farther back, right? Yes. They're operating off of stuff that was designed in 2003.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And with the importance of data in every decision that we make, I mean, that is the reason that we met in the first place, which I'm obviously the audience probably doesn't know how we kind of got to know each other. But originally you all were helping us do a data training called Visualizing Mental Health, where we would help organizations adapt, I guess, Tableau skills into their data, or into the kind of like their normal processing, to be able to make decisions in accordance with data. And it is so fascinating how, whether it's homelessness or mental health issues or everything in general, how many decisions are made without data taken into consideration. Yeah. And that seems so interesting to me. And I wonder if, like, from you all, what would you chalk that up to?
Yeah, it felt like the floor was like falling out when realizing that, like, that this whole infrastructure is basically based on hypotheticals that aren't just backed up by any probabilistic or statistical method. It's like, even the methodology. I mean, if we want to talk like specifics of like point time count or like any of the other data points that they get, it's yeah, I think. And you said the question's the direction of like where we would go with that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so. I guess the best analogy, like Trevor kind of touched on it with the siloed information. Like, these different interest groups, like, have different goals, have different priorities, and not always. Because like we had for like right after launch, it was probably a couple months after the app launch, we had unhoused individuals, like chronically unhoused individuals, outreach workers, EMS, fire, APD, Texas State, I think. Yeah, everybody was on the same platform talking. They were able to like, you get these, you get a window to voice your concerns or like your priorities that may or may not be able to be sent to, like, you can't, like, here's an anecdote. I was talking to an individual who was complaining because he could no longer go to the shelter because there was they would confiscate his knife that he kept in his tent. And the reason he had a knife was because there was a dangerous group in the area that would steal his stuff if he didn't have the knife. And he wouldn't be allowed to walk back early because there was a new development, like a housing, like kind of like a just pop-up apartments. And they started, the shelter started busing people back. I'm literally 500 meters so that they weren't seen by the institution. And that messed with his priority structure because obviously he needs to be there to not get robbed. So there's all sorts of like weird interactions and he can't tell that to those people. Like, how is that gonna, yeah. And there's all sorts of individual examples like that, like the fire department not wanting to go into camps because they get their stuff stolen off the trucks, which wears on their psyche and their interaction. We talked to them at 10 a.m. They'd been out to the same camp 9 times that day.
Wow.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I think a lot of this stuff too is, they formulated a bunch of these ideas in, call it the late 90s, early 2000s. And a lot of people have just been operating on whatever the principles were at that time as like ground truth fact. despite what the data may or may not tell them, because they either don't have the ability to put the data in a system that will actually help them understand it, or they just aren't paying attention to it. So like one of the best examples is they instituted Housing First in 2012. And, Obama said that by 2024, they would end homelessness. It's tripled, I think, since then. So it took, 12 years to figure that out. And when you're operating with, mental health, individuals who are sleeping on the streets, stuff in that nature, you can't take 12 years to figure out if something works or not. And so you need to take these data systems and be able to actually rapidly iterate and figure out what actually does work and what doesn't work. Like even if you have to do like A/B testing where it's like, hey, for this group of people, we're going to try this, and for this group of people, we're going to try this, and figure out which one works. You're still trying to help both groups, but you're trying to figure out which one actually gets me to the result I want, rather than relying on, a research paper from 1962 or something.
And has your data been used in that A/B testing in any way, or is that a goal of yours?
That is a goal. We have our own outreach team that we've used to like test hypotheses and stuff like that. So it's only one guy. So there's only so much A/B testing we can do.
Yeah.
But we do connect people with the right resources as they need it and as we find them. Because like a lot of the mental health processes are one size fits all, which is the same thing in homelessness. And that just doesn't work. And we're finding that out in like healthcare broadly right now, where it's you go to the doctor and they have this like, here's the safe range for your cholesterol or whatever. But then they don't ask you any other follow-on questions or actually like look and see if you're healthy or anything. They're just like, oh, you just have high cholesterol. And they apply this like pretty much across the board in any medical institution. But we're finding out like, no, this specific guy has this because of this. And everyone's like genetic makeup and all of that is determining what these things are happening. So you can't do this one size fits all.
That's a good point actually, because they've been operating under that mindset of, okay, you have this huge apparatus that cannot deal with the finite, and you have to come up with like big distributions that get an acceptable result, and these other people fall through the cracks, and maybe it doesn't understand the problem, but it works, quote unquote. But we have the tech now. We have the tech to be able to do incredible things. I mean, and we don't apply it on. It's not implied in this chain of effects. Basically.
Yeah, and the I guess more individualized perspective that you all have, I guess, even more micro level data than we've ever had before, specifically for homelessness. Yeah. And I guess I would love to hear how that intersects with mental health, potentially kind of mental health situations that people might be going through, because obviously we know that they're with mental health issues and homelessness, they're comorbidities, they come together usually. And do you all look into those kind of intersections, and what are you finding?
So one of the best examples is there's a guy who lives in South Austin who lives by himself and has a chainsaw. And when he is not on his medication, he will go around and cut down trees, hop into people's backyards and cut down trees, and generally like scare the people who live around it. And so what it does, though, is as other homeless people move into the area, they hear the guy with the chainsaw like at 2 a.m. and they're like, I'm not living here. So they move. So it creates this outlier area where you actually don't have a lot of homeless people in the area because you have this one guy. Now, when he is on his medication, you would never know he was homeless. Like he uses the laundromat, totally normal guy. Our outreach guy talks to him all the time. Our outreach guy lives like across the street from where he lives, basically. And his camp is actually like very, very neat. Like it's all organized. There's not a ton of trash. Like there's almost no trash, actually. And it's interesting. And he's been arrested a few times for like trespassing and doing stuff like that. But he always, ends up in the same area. And so you take this into account when you're looking at the broader picture as well, because when you have this really specific information, you can start to like model patterns at a macro level. So if I know like, hey, there's, 4 people in this camp and they're suffering from this myriad of mental illnesses, I can start to model how that's actually going to affect the area around it and figure out, okay, the reason this camp hasn't gotten above 10 is because of this versus the camp that's, a mile that way is 200 people.
Yeah. Austin, I think it was Echo, did a thing in 2013, or no, 2023. And they were like estimating like 55% of individuals I think it was chronically homeless individuals suffering from some form of mental illness. And I think their number, I think it must be higher, especially with the just based on our experience.
So it's interesting because it might be 55% are diagnosed, but you also have a very, big drug problem in homelessness. And when you start doing, and like in Austin specifically, it's meth. And when you start doing a lot of meth, it causes mental illness. And if it's not treated, it can become permanent. So there might be like 55% are diagnosed, but because, let's say, a different overlap of 55% are also on drugs, it's actually much higher, but like you can solve this percentage by just not having the drug. Yeah. And it's when they're looking at this data, they take a lot of it as like, this amount have mental health and this doesn't affect anything else. And they're not looking at how do all of these different pieces of the data actually connect to make your picture make sense versus what everyone is seeing on the street, right?
They also don't play well with like a lot of the policy motives, or motifs, I guess should say, because everything's been housing first from the top down. One of our outreach workers, he sent a picture of so when you take someone who's been chronically homeless for X amount of years, is maybe suffering some substance abuse and or mental illness, which will like almost always develop after prolonged experiences or prolonged length of time outside like this, because of the rift between normal society and that. They can't adjust. Like a lot of the times, if as far as HMIS is concerned, like what an organization needs to put in the database that's under the vendor to check the box to get the funding for next year was this individual housed or did they go to this program and all that stuff. And that's it. It's like, it has a checkbox of like, has a mental illness. And that picture was of the apartment that was given to an individual who was very obviously suffering from something that was unaddressed in the data set, and it looks like his living room looks like a homeless camp.
Yeah.
It doesn't resolve the underlying issue, and it's just moving the like problem around. And in this case, they're not moving they're moving people around, just cycling through this thing. And
yeah, that's a really interesting point. I want to hang on for a second, because I'm in school to be a professional, licensed professional counselor, marriage and family therapist. We talk a lot about kind of the intersection between homelessness, mental illness, different types of struggles that people are going through. I have heard about the Housing First initiative, where it seems to be, I guess, disconnected from the issue is what you're saying, the underlying problems. Now, where do you think that disconnect is in regards to like helping the underlying issue that people are going through? Is it lack of resources? Is it lack of professionals? Is it lack of navigation services? What are you guys thinking?
All those things, but I think it's in a different way than most people expect. Like I think Housing First, like I think we can all agree that like having a shower, having your own space is like necessary to recover from something like that. That you need this environment to start. Okay, I baseline. I can reset. I can start working on myself, and like reinvesting in my discipline, in my will to overcome whatever it is. But it can't work in a vacuum. It cannot work in an environment that. It's one of those situations where like, you put this big bell curve over the over the broad problem, and you get an acceptable return on investment basically for as far as the federal money is concerned. That's basically what the answer is. There's this blanket solution, put them in a house, see if they figure it out. And that's driven by like you were saying, the resource allocation is stymied. I don't think it's lacking. It's more stymied based on the fact that all this information is siloed. Most of these we talked to one of an organization that did coordinated outreach. I said coordinated. Coordinated was a CC email of like 60 people, where they would. hey, I need so and so needs a house tonight. Spam email in a 60-person email chain. That was the level of tech and like speed of information. And information changes every minute. And that guy might decide, I don't think maybe the person who physically talked to him, he has like an issue with that person, or maybe he doesn't trust that that's going to be. Maybe he moves to a different location. Now what?
And regarding the housing first, it works in the sense of like, I can no longer afford rent this month. I'm going to become homeless. I find the resources I need, and I'm good. Basically, it works really, really well for people who are on the verge of homelessness or just became homeless, don't have a drug addiction, and don't have mental health issues. And they can put them in places, and it works pretty well. But it's once you hit the chronically unhoused homelessness, I think is their technical term, where you do have high levels of mental health issues and high levels of drug abuse, where it doesn't work so well because they just aren't adjusted to being able to take care of themselves in a manner that would be like, yeah, he can like live in the apartment next to me and it makes sense. And there's a lot of we did a study where there's several apartments in Austin that take the housing vouchers for Housing First. And when you actually look at the crime distribution in those apartment complexes compared to the ones around them, you have higher rates of stuff like assault and theft and burglary and stuff like that. And then higher rates of eviction. So you're creating this like vicious cycle that's not just affecting the person, but affecting the community that's also having to like live around the person. So you need to, and like Haven for Hope down in San Antonio does a much better job of this, where they co-locate all the resources in one spot and they have a individualized plan. It's like, okay, you're going to go see the mental health professional. You're going to get that figured out first. Then you're going to go to housing, or, we're going to put you into this rehab center on site. All of it's in one area. And then you'll go to the mental health and then you'll go on.
Yeah.
And that works a lot better than something like Austin or Dallas or Houston, where it's all kind of spread out.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you guys have been doing work in other cities besides just Austin.
Oh, yeah.
Right. What have you been, is each city relatively unique in the way that it approaches homelessness?
It kind of depends. Most of what you see in terms of uniqueness is the cooperation between the nonprofits, the city, and the first responders. So like Houston does a very good job coordinating. Austin doesn't. Dallas is kind of in the middle. San Antonio is very good. You really just see outliers in terms of uniqueness, where like San Antonio is an outlier on how well they handle it. Like Reno is an outlier. But most places seem to handle it roughly the same. So like we've mapped out Waco, Dallas, Austin, and San Jose, and it's kind of all over the place. And like even in Dallas, where like they have a better coordination than Austin, because Dallas is so large, their encampments are just all over the place. And Dallas has a separate problem that Austin doesn't have, where they have a lot of abandoned structures. So these abandoned structures, people move into them, start fires, stuff like that. So if it's in a strip mall, you cause other problems.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Yeah. I think that is a really important, you said coordination, kind of bringing folks together, nonprofits, as well as the government, everyone kind of coming together to ascend on this one issue, which is homelessness. At the Translational Health Research Center where I work, the whole idea of what we do is translating the work into actual kind of like community movement in one way or another. And I guess that bringing that idea to what you all are doing, you're getting so much amazing data. You're beginning to help, I guess, understand the issue from both on the ground and satellite images, things on those lines. What are some things that you think are happening, or information that you are learning that could potentially make waves in regards to kind of progressing us towards helping this the unhoused community? What is some data that many people don't know that you think that they might need to know to really make a difference in this issue?
So one of the things we specifically built into like the V1 of our coordination platform was encampment management, for lack of a better term, where it's everyone knows exactly what's going on in this encampment. They know who's there. They have windowed views into like what kind of information they can get about that person. But if they want to go clean up an encampment, instead of like sending out the email list of like which shelter actually has information. You can say, okay, we know this shelter has this many beds. This shelter has this many beds. There's this many housing vouchers available. The people will fit. So they can go in, instead of taking 3 months from, okay, we're going to clean up this encampment, to actually doing it, you can do it in a week. And a lot of that information is, like we can close this encampment because we know these people are more amicable to it. And a lot of it too is building trust in the community. Like our outreach guy will spend, 2 weeks on a specific camp. He did this in Houston before, where he'd spend 2 weeks getting to know everybody, making sure everyone was on the same page, saying you need to be here at this time for when the bus shows up to take you where you need to go. And that works a lot better. Like Austin has like, I think 10 outreach workers. That's not really enough to cover the amount of people that are in Austin. And, whether or not they build trust, like one of the big problems too is, so you'll have someone who their heart's in the right place. They want to work in this, but they don't really understand the community. So they'll go out there and like the first question they ask is just like, okay, what are your mental health issues? And like someone who's been on the street for that long doesn't really want to answer that question, like they're more interested in getting themselves situated. And so like what we'll do instead is like build up this trust, whatever, and then take them to a place like a restaurant or something, and then ask them the questions once they actually have like built the trust and are like, okay, I get that you need this now, versus like walking up, the first thing you hit them with is a very personal question.
And with these with this infrastructure, it enables, you can get more bang for your buck with those resources. So even if you have like 10 people, you can still do the restaurant thing, or like just spend more time with individuals and not run through that, blanket solution basically.
Yeah.
One of the more interesting things we found, like coming through the data and like talking to people on the streets, is prior to 2020, homelessness in Austin was kind of a weird area. So like they legalized camping in 2019. All of a sudden, like everyone's on Cesar Chavez. People can see it now. They know it's there. But it had a third of the population it has today. And prior to that, before they legalized camping, it was sort of like, you knew it existed, but it was well managed. We talked to a guy specifically who had been here since like 2013. He coordinated with the Parks and Rec department to say, hey, I'm going to camp here. They're like, that's fine. Just clean up the area, bring out the trash once a week, and we'll handle it. You can stay there. Just keep it clean. It's fine. And he said when 2020 hit, a lot of new people started to move in, like with the lockdowns, because the services weren't available. They couldn't keep up with it. So it's kind of like when you bring a pot of water to boil, and then you turn it off for a while. It goes back down. It's going to take a lot longer to get to boiling. But when it gets to boiling, you turn it off and you turn it right back on. It's just going to boil immediately. So when you turn off these services for this long, it gets up to boiling. And then you're like, okay, we're going to slowly roll out the services. It's not going to go down, right? And then you had like the problems with the trash. So like there's one camp specifically that for a while was actually like effectively a neighborhood. Like they had fences. It was back behind like a strip mall. They took out their trash. They actually had like trash bins they would take up to the dumpster. It was well managed. They had like run extension cords underground to generators, so they had power out there. It was really interesting. But within, I don't know, like 3 months of us starting this, some more people had started to move in on the north side of the property, and they had just started to like trash it. And we talked to the guy who used to run it, and he's like, I've given up like trying to enforce it, because there's like double the amount of people now that use, because it was like 12 people. It was like, 20 people now that live on that side, and it's just flowing into this side, and I can't control it anymore. And like when you live out there, you don't have the resources to be able to enforce anything. It's not an HOA, right?
He basically was the HOA until
That this is probably the most complex, I guess, issue that many people will probably say and agree upon, that the homelessness, the homeless crisis around the United States is being dealt with differently, not only in each city, but each municipality, in each state. And it is so interesting that you said something earlier that I really appreciated, which was the idea of building trust and taking somebody out for even just like a quick bite to eat, to get to know them, might be one of the best, like the biggest missing links that we have here.
Yeah.
And it's just so fascinating that even just that little bit could make such a huge impact. And I guess I would love to hear more about those types of situations, about really just kind of like locking down the idea that humanizing
Yes.
people that are going through a situation that is out of their control, and really beginning to like see them for who they are, and that we are all in this together, might be, I guess, one of the biggest missing links that we have to help with the homelessness crisis that we're in.
Yeah. I mean, psychologically, like humans, empathy only extends so far. And this isn't like something that I feel like is like, it's like, yeah, you can say it but if you don't apply it, these things, and saturation is a thing. So in his example, like when we were talking about the guy who lived out there, they'll take the time to interact with them and be like, okay, if you clean up, it's fine. We'll have an agreement. But you insert, 20, 30, 100 people into that same equation. It now becomes less equitable for those for like an outreach worker to make that sort of, they have to organize these individuals, and there's more nuanced interactions that are going to occur because now you have 10 people over here doing like 10 people over here, and they don't want to work with them. And that's normal. That's to be expected. What you can do about this is engineer around it and accept that these are the limitations that we have to work with. How do we maximize the potential to and I've said this before, I think a couple times, but like, I think like homelessness as an abstract concept is a animal that eats an individual's humanity. It eats away your ability to invest in yourself, to have ambition, regardless of the situation. If it's a short-term thing, if it's a chronic thing, or if it in many cases is a done on purpose, like very like this is the direction that this individual wants to go, and maintaining that or developing an environment that reinvests those individuals in their ability to invest in themselves and restore that humanity needs that personalized kind of touch. So I think and you need to be, they need to be aware of like all the other interactions that are coming into it, like we said with the mental health or substance abuse. But yeah, you can, with the right strategy and the right intelligence, you can actually you can account for those things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that plays into the mental health more than anything, is like reintroducing this humanity that they might have been missing for some period of time out on the streets, that they just like need somebody who, hasn't been on the streets to talk to and like understand what's actually going on. Same thing as like you have a therapist where it's like, I need someone who hasn't been like in the trenches in my brain for however long I've been there to like talk me through this, rather than, going to someone else who also like has the same, like sometimes that's useful, but like depending on like how far down a hole you are, you need someone to like put things into a different perspective than yours.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's what we learn on a daily basis is what is really clear while going to school and learning about these topics, about how to help somebody to the highest level, is you're never giving advice. Yeah. That's not the goal. Is not to say, oh, you should do this. Yeah. The goal is to understand and really just see, like, help somebody see the issue or see what's going on. Mm-hmm. Hold up the mirror or be guidance in one way or another, in whichever way that they want to go. Yep. But that also is at its core of like what you're saying, is just really seeing somebody as a human being, as a person. We all have flaws. We all have issues that we're going through. We all have situations that are difficult and also fantastic at the same time. But we all need help. And whether that's somebody who has been, very potentially monetarily successful on one end, to somebody who might be really dealing with homelessness issues, or other types of mental illness, or just situations that I might need help with on a regular basis. So yeah, I think that's a really important thing. I'm happy that you guys mentioned that, because that individual touch, for example, I haven't heard of any other organizations that are really doing that. I'm not saying that they don't exist. Yeah. I'm sure that they do.
Specifically in the areas that like we work in. There's one in Dallas.
Mobile?
Mobiles and Fishes in Austin.
Mm-hmm.
They're very good about that.
Mm-hmm.
There's plenty that do that. It's just when it's mostly for we're going to an area and then these people are very good at doing it here, because the logistics of actually getting out to these camps is like non-trivial, and having the people that can go out there, given like the turnover rate for outreach, is really hard to manage. But yeah, like based on what you're saying, the best lessons are like the self-realizations that you have when just like talking to somebody or taking a class or something like that, and you just go, oh, and then it clicks. Like you can tell me to do it a million times, but until it clicks, it doesn't really matter.
I'm happy that you said that, because I'd love to ask both of you, since doing this, you guys have been doing this for a year now?
Year and a half.
Year and a half now. What's the biggest thing that you've learned? It can be about yourself. It can be about the homeless crisis in general. But I'm sure you've been exposed to a lot of things, and there might have been those kind of snap realizations. I would love to hear more about that.
I would say, yeah, it was kind of what I brought up earlier. It was the realization that that circle of like these organizations that are doing what I would consider the right direction in restoring humanity are kind of bookended financially and policy wise, and they're boxed in by the entities that are at an higher level, or you go up the chain all the way up, that are now disassociated from that empathetic circle I was talking about. They do not; those individuals that are strategizing impacts that contain those organizations are it's a numbers game when we get that high. It's not a personal thing, and there's no feedback between the groups of like how these things actually work. I've seen those data, every data metric that they transfer, and it does not encompass those things. And you realize that it just cascades all the way up and down. And so you have this big system that is just kind of happening, and no one really knows. They know their own purview, what it means to them. And once you get to the top of the chain, it's like the realization that, yeah, this is just sort of how it is.
Yeah.
That was jarring for sure.
And like building on that, there were like a lot of assumptions we had coming into it. And I would say a lot of them were just like proven correctly. But like basically what he just said, like if you live in a city that has a big homeless problem, whether it's San Francisco, Seattle, Portland, Austin, doesn't matter. You have a bunch of assumptions, and most of them actually turn out to be correct, which is really sad. Like San Francisco doesn't actually have a huge homeless population. It's like in the 3,000s. It's not that big. But when you think homelessness, you think San Francisco, because the problem is in such a small area, it's so confined, and it's so extreme that it just seems like there would be a lot more, versus like where Austin, has at least double that. And the problem is nowhere near as bad. It's still not great, but it's not at San Francisco levels. And I would say, I mean, there's a lot of lessons that were learned, but it's like, so the guy I was talking about that lived in the woods and had an agreement with the Parks and Rec department. He had a master's in physics, and he worked for Colorado Chemical and Biological Response after he got out of the Army in like the 90s. He got addicted to heroin, became homeless, got himself off of heroin, and just liked being homeless. So he was just a normal guy out there living. And it was easy to verify, because like everything he was telling me was like actually advanced physics concepts and stuff. Like, we talked for like 2 hours, and he was like giving me all this information. I'm just like, this isn't really what, like, most people don't expect that when they go like talk to a homeless person, right? Most of the people you talk to are like at a gas station, or maybe they're at a stoplight or something like that. But the amount of people you don't see is vastly higher than the amount of people you do see, which should be obvious for the most part. But like, if a lot of people don't go out onto the green belts or whatever, or like look around their area, they're not going to know that that's just behind it. Like specifically in Austin, because your greenery is so low to the ground, you could be 5 feet in the woods and no one can see you. So like, we've gone to some areas where we're like, hey, someone said there was a camp here, but like we can't see anything on like satellite images or on Google Maps or something. So let's just go look. And we walk in, and there's like 50 people.
Wow.
And they're just hiding back there. And then the impact that each encampment has on the surrounding community is vastly different. Like, some of them have like a pretty severe impact, where like You have a lot of people with mental health and drug abuse issues where they'll just walk into people's houses. There's assault, stuff like that. And then you'll have some where they didn't know it was there and it's been there for 10 years because they're just hanging out back there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that is an interesting point about checking our own assumptions and stereotypes. I think that is, I think that that's something that needs to be said of like, we don't know what people are going through.
Yeah.
And we also want the best for them and we need to help them as much as we possibly can. And which leads me to ask, have you guys worked with other nonprofits or other organizations that might potentially use your data? I know you talked about first responders, firefighters, police officers, but are there other organizations that use your data or not yet?
So there's a couple organizations that use our data, and there's a couple organizations where we'll take their information and put it on our app. So like if there's a couple places We Can Now, they're in Austin, and every Sunday they'll do haircuts, hygiene, food, stuff like that. So every Sunday on the app, it pops up, gives you an alert, and says, hey, you can go here. It's in the same place. We've worked with Senator Tan Parker's office in Texas in formulating a couple bills for homelessness. So one that I think is going to pass is taking that Haven for Hope model and applying it to all the major cities in Texas.
The one in
the one in San Antonio. Yeah. So you'll have these campuses that are like right outside downtown areas where you can it's 24 hours. You can take people there. They'll have a mental health station there. So you know where to take them. It's not like, a police officer at 2 a.m. is like calling around trying to figure out where to go. And a lot of the times it's just like, jail, I guess. Like you don't want to take them there, but they have a mental health facility in the jail. So this will serve as a very, very good, I don't want to say collection point, but like a point to direct everybody to the same spot. And then there was another bill where we were basically working on standardizing data across Texas. So a lot of what we've done has been like taking our research and then like figuring out how can we apply this to policy. Working with the Texas Homeless Network, working with the Cicero Institute on like, here's what HMIS looks like, and here's how we can change that. Potentially talking to people at the federal level saying, hey, the HMIS standard was built in 2003. Here's everything wrong with it that we've found. Here's everything we've found that you can either add on, change, or remove that will work. Apply this as you see fit, and trying to, move from like a local setting where we're just dealing with like a couple of cities to like, here's how we can at the federal level actually start to address this. Because the federal level doesn't actually have that much control. They have funding control, and then they require like every year or every other year you do a point in time count, and every year you send them all your data for the year. That doesn't really tell you a lot when everyone's on different systems and everyone's collecting different data. And so you just kind of have like, okay, we know there were like, it was like 750,000 homeless people in the U.S. last year. Yeah. Here's the demographics. Here's like a rough count of, mental health, drug abuse, stuff like that. But that's not really useful information at the macro level.
And then they go, good job.
Yeah.
And it's just like, what else can you do? From their perspective. And I don't know.
Yeah. That's it. There seems to be a lot of missing data.
Oh yeah.
And also a lot of missing data in regards to like success stories about what has happened to potentially work in the benefit of people who have been experiencing homelessness and have been housed or have gotten the services that they've needed, or have started working again or things on those lines.
Yeah.
Seeing the other end of the story, I think, is also really important.
Yes.
That seems to be missing.
Yes, 100%. And our outreach guy is working on a lot of stuff for that, for like this positive media that you can put out and say like, this is this guy's story. We work with him. And then he went to whatever other nonprofit to like get himself help. And a lot of the success stories you end up seeing are actually people who were, like I said earlier, like on the verge of homelessness or just became homeless. And like the transition was pretty easy. The success stories of people who, have been on the streets for a long time are rare, and it's sad. And like, you got to wonder, do they just not want to be, found? Like, do they not want people to like know, right? Like there's a stigma behind it. Or, is there just not that many, which is also sad.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think that understanding, at least is something that I have learned over the past couple of years, but really defining what homelessness is. Is it somebody that is living out of their car, or is in between houses, or is couch surfing, or is living in the woods or on the streets, or things along those lines? I got a reaction out of you, so I want to, like, what are you thinking?
So many terms.
Yeah. The government has tried to do this. So you've got the unhoused homeless, chronically unhoused homeless. So that's like what most people think of when they think of a homeless person, is someone who's just like, they see them every day outside all the time. And like, there are people that actually just like hang out outside all the time, but actually like go somewhere at night and you just wouldn't know. And then there's the housed homeless. So that's like, you're in a shelter, you're in like rapid rehousing or something along those lines. So that's their three. But like, whether or not they consider someone in a car housed or not, it's not really clear. Like, different cities have different definitions. And like, if you look at San Francisco or Oakland specifically, they have campers like everywhere. So they are living in a camper, but like the outside of the camper might have like 3 tons of trash around it. So it's this like, where are we putting this on the scale? Because it's not so much what's the definition of like homelessness, but what is this person's state and how can we get him to a better state, right? Because you could be living in a camper. I can go live in a camper right now on like a national park, and I am housed, right? I'm not even homeless, but like that guy living in the camper on the street who has a mental health issue and is, he's got like bugs and rats and like all kinds of stuff. It's not the same situation. So like, that's where the individual data is actually useful.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense of understanding the micro, the micro data, the micro level data.
Yep.
And I know that we were joking around about this earlier before we were on screen, but the use of AI is, changing literally daily. And with Nomadik AI, you guys, I guess, using data to track different types of positioning and trends and things along those lines. Is there like another level of using AI that you are working on, or that you can potentially see in the future of how to, I guess, really make some waves in this issue?
Yeah. So like, I think it's at the beginning we were talking about obfuscating information, especially HIPAA information or information that like we talked about, like these data, the reason the data is the way it is because of those concerns. A lot of the time it's either the social stigma of I was, homeless for X amount of time, or if it's like the mental health, substance abuse, or criminal past that needs to be siloed in this regard. And that needs to be retained. But the problem is the entire apparatus was built on the supposition that you could not ever put these together into some sort of model to look at this information. But we have the technical expertise now. Look what OpenAI has been doing. We have the technical expertise to encode this information, learn from it, and develop models that help better than the aggregate apparatus altogether, but never compromise the information that these individuals want to protect. We have the technology now. They use it in a lot of organizations. I can't say which, but yeah, they use it in a lot of organizations. It's very good, and it's going to take. I think as far as we're concerned, we want to build that out in a way that starts to, and this is the hard part, is like, okay, how do you bring the community in and manage all this at once, and like have the inertia to do those sort of things? Because if no one trusts it, then that's a big problem too. And that's, like coming up with foolproof ways to like, hey, this will work, we'll never compromise, that sort of thing. They use that all the time.
Yeah, like one of the things we found at the roundtables here with Senator Tam Parker is a lot of the cities wanted funding specifically for more data entry people. And if you've used ChatGPT or pretty much anything, like data entry as a job is gone. Like you can just click and drag and it'll do whatever you want. And so when we heard that, we were like understandably confused. And I was like, okay, I mean, yeah, you need someone to put the initial information into like the app, right? Like we have an intake form on our app that'll like connect to HMIS. And sure, you need that, but like the way they're doing it is like some cities are like still like filling out on paper and then like handing it to a guy and then he's like typing it in. It's like you don't have to do that anymore. Like Austin, I think just started using an app like to actually enter the data on like an iPad or something, but they're like so far behind on the ability to just get the data into a useful format that it's not really a surprise that they can't do anything with the data in the first place.
We spent 45 minutes discussing a CSV.
Yeah. So one of the things, like the first thing we did on our app, because we've worked in geospatial AI before, was like, okay, your phone has a ton of sensors in it. It's got an IMU, an inertial measurement unit that can tell which way the phone is facing. It's got a GPS. So if I take my phone and I take a picture, I can take all that information, detect certain objects. If I know the rough size of those objects, I can tell you pretty precisely where it's at, especially with like a phone camera. When I'm taking a picture like right there, it's probably like 6 feet away from wherever you took the picture. So in our app, when you send us a picture, it goes through and it's like, okay, there's a tent here, there's a bunch of trash over here. There's, a grill here, there's a propane tank. And then it just says, okay, here's where all the things are here. It's on the map. It's very easy. Yeah. It's like the map you see on the website
is a distribution, like it's like a heat map. And the best part about it is the only person who ever saw that picture was the guy who took it.
Yeah. Like we don't look at the picture. It gets processed by a model. It gets vectorized and then it's fine. So like if you take a picture of a person, right, like no one on our side is actually seeing that. It's just, this is this person. And then the model can say, hey, this person was also seen here. So for your outreach workers, you start to build he's been spotted in these areas. If you need to go find him to provide whatever outreach service, look in this area. Don't just look here and give up.
Yeah, that's a lot of, they have to go find, we heard that story a lot where they would just, like they'd have a whole day of sites to visit, people to visit. Did you fill out this form? Can I get you these documents? Here's your mail for the day. And they would just never find the guy. Wow. They would just be like, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I do want to bring back up something you guys have mentioned a couple of times, which is privacy and HIPAA. Yeah. And I think that is interesting that a lot of this stuff sounds HIPAA compliant, which, going in, you don't know who the person's identity is, remaining secret, things along those lines. Have you heard any feedback or people that are, I guess, weary about being, I guess, utilizing your platform because of that?
Most of the people we hear that from are they know HIPAA very well. They need to for their job, but they don't understand like technology broadly or like recent advances in technology. So once we kind of explain, you can just do all of this and like you're not exposing anything, you're fine. Usually it's positive after that.
Got it.
So
Because it's like, hey, the police don't need to know this guy's social security number. It's like, okay, then you just won't show them the social security number. Like it's pretty easy, but it's like the police should know that like they don't need to know that like he has schizophrenia, but they should know he does have a mental health disorder. So when you're approaching him, take that into account.
I see. Yes. I see. So still keeping that data private and that information private while still providing a broad spectrum understanding about the situation that is happening.
Yeah.
And like it goes both ways. Like if you have an interaction that's supposed to take place, like maybe this has happened a couple times where like an officer has to go in and remove someone from like a encampment or wherever it may be. And if you have the priors on, what is the likelihood of this situation going south? Maybe it's the opposite of what you'd think. Like instead of like, hey, inform the police officers, bring backup. Maybe it's like, hey, just bring one guy and just talk to him.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't have to know these things about him. You don't have to know this about him. I don't think it would be wise just to do that, but yeah, it would be something along those lines of like, hey, maybe this is probably the best way. Now faith is restored in the police because they had a good interaction. Faith is restored in the homeless individual because they had a good interaction. It's not like the situation with AFD where they're just done.
The over-escalation.
Yeah, the over-escalation. I mean, there's a whole aspect of like psychological fatigue from these different groups that are all interacting on this board, and it's tangible when you're in it, but it's like it's just opaque to anyone outside of it. And then the further up the chain you go, it's like, oh, it's just numbers.
But basically, you can take the micro information to inform the macro.
Yeah.
So I can say, hey, given all this information, here's what you should do in this situation without giving away anything specifically, versus what they do right now, which is take the macro to inform the micro, which doesn't work.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I know we're kind of whittling down on time here, but I want to make sure that I cover some important parts that I prepped for. One of which is the idea that in the next couple of years, things could change dramatically. We don't know. Everything we're taking is day by day. What do you all believe is the next step or the first step into really kind of turning the ship in a way that you would deem, like a success?
I think one of the most important things that needs to be addressed is the fentanyl crisis itself. That, like, if you look at Philadelphia, right, it's fentanyl plus xylazine. So it's like when you see all those pictures of like people slumped over and like sores, stuff like that. I think that's one of the biggest things to address. And in addressing that, you can start to have downstream effects where people will start to help themselves because if they can't get the fentanyl anymore, right, which is super addictive, maybe they move to heroin or something, not as strong. You, over time, because fentanyl right now, you can get a pill for like $3 in some places, right? Like heroin was, as far as we know, more expensive than that. It could have been $20, but still, like for $3, becoming a drug addict while you're homeless is really easy. It needs to not be easy to be homeless to sort of drive that change of getting people to want to have that realization that they need to get off the street. Because like if you go into a lot of these camps around Austin, they have so much food that there's like a pile of rotting food off to the side. It's not, most of the time, the food isn't the problem. The water's not really the problem. It's the mental health and the drugs that are causing them to prefer this lifestyle. So I would say, for me at least, the fentanyl crisis is probably the biggest.
It's a huge,
the biggest issue to tackle.
Yeah, Morgan, what do you think?
And remind me of the question.
I guess thoughts in regards to
where it's going to go.
Yes, like what do you think is step one, or that would really prove to be a big step in regards to shifting the tide of homelessness? And we've talked about the numbers going up year over year. What do you think? I mean, you guys know, you have all the data to make that. To round the corner.
Yeah, I think step one is just getting everybody on the same page, as deciling that information. And I think because from different, every corner of this is like you get drastically, impactful stories or impactful information about that. Just either in the terms of like technical, like we were talking, we had to take the explain how this sort of worked to individuals with like HIPAA. Or just other groups talking to each other. It just doesn't translate or whatsoever. Or, it getting them on the same page is the first step, because then you can start figuring out, okay, what are we really doing here? What are we really doing, and how can we best address all our concerns? And the goal across the board should be, like we were talking about, it's connected to make it harder to be homeless. But it's also, put the individuals that are suffering what, like I said, is this thing that eats humanity in a situation where that maximizes their potential to have this come to Jesus moment of like, okay, these are the things that I need to do. This is my next step. My path is sort of clear on this, and I want to do this. Like rebuilding that ambition to accomplish those goals is like the most important thing, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then avoid, I think the alternative is like, it could get much worse. And that's, step one is preventing that. So
yes.
Yeah.
Step one is preventing things from getting worse for sure.
I mean, building on that, like with the fentanyl crisis, it's being laced in everything, right? You have college kids who are going out and they're buying weed or something, and there's fentanyl in it. And there's like 3 things that happen. Either 1, they OD, and like that's it. 2, they become addicted to that, and then they start that path. Or 3, they realize what's like happening, and then hopefully they're fine afterwards.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time, it's 1 or 2. I mean, there's a billboard between here and Austin. It's like there was a kid, I think his name is Austin actually, that died from a fentanyl overdose, and it's got the number of how many kids who have accidentally ingested fentanyl and died from it, and it creates this. It makes the problem a lot worse.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess that does lead me to ask about Narcan or different things on those lines. And I guess you guys being more of on the data side, have you been seeing any information about the availability of Narcan, or do you use that? Or
so it's free. There's a few different dispensers in Austin. It's just free. You can
I've
go
seen
get
a
it.
lot of used Narcan just on the forest floor.
It's crazy. You talk to some people and they're like, "Oh yeah, I've been Narcan 9 times." You're like, "What?" Yeah, it's wild, but it is freely available, at least in Austin. I know in a couple of other cities you can go get it in different areas. I think it's kind of expensive if you don't use those, but if you have like an HSA, I think you can buy it.
Yeah, and I do believe that there are other organizations, at least ones that I've encountered, that give it out for free.
Yep.
And yeah, because those preventable overdoses through the use of Narcan,
Like our outreach guy carries it with him.
Yeah, absolutely saves lives, and that's great that he carries that, because I know that that's one of the
because like exposure to a very, very, very small amount of fentanyl is lethal to someone who has never experienced it before. Like this happens to police officers pretty often, where like they'll just inhale a little bit and they need Narcan. Like then.
Well, thank you guys. Before we end, I want to make sure that you have space to talk about how people can contact you, or people that you typically work with, as a way of just like kind of opening up the invitation for people to reach out. So what's the easiest way to contact y'all?
Yeah. The support at nomadik.ai. That pretty much just goes straight to me.
Great.
That's probably the best way. Our website is Nomadik with a K .ai. You can see the map of like all the current camps we have, their inventories and stuff like that on the website. We have the app. It's on iPhone and Android. We only have camps in a few cities, but if you send us information from pretty much anywhere else, we still ingest it. So that's kind of how we start getting a baseline in certain areas, is just like roll it out to the general public before we start working with the city to like show the city like, hey, look, we already have this.
Great.
And then, a few organizations, it's been really nice to we can now. There's a lot of small nonprofits that are popping up that are just trying to do what they can, even if they don't have government funding. A lot of these nonprofits have like millions of dollars of government funding to do different things, and it's really nice to see small ones pop up. They're just like trying to do what they can with donations that they can pull in. Yeah.
Are you looking to partner with any specific type of nonprofit, or anyone just trying to go after the homeless crisis?
I would say broadly anyone going after the crisis, but the ideal customer is like people who have outreach and kind of deal with stuff like that. Any of the shelters, like I said, our platform is built on coordination, so the more people on it, the better it is.
Gotcha. Yeah. Great. Trevor, Morgan, I looked at you guys incorrectly. Sorry about that. Thank you guys so much for your time. I am this conversation has been great for me to just kind of open up more about the homeless crisis, and I hope the conversation doesn't end. So thank you guys so much.
Awesome. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. This podcast was presented by thecentralstate.com. Thecentralstate.com is a consortium focused on improving resilience in Central Texas by using evidence from research to improve human and community health. This website highlights health and research data by county and opportunities to find funding and resources for mental health programs in our area. Additionally, there are interactive calendars that keep you up to speed regarding what is happening right here in Central Texas.